Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Thomas de Groet. I'm from the Barony of Northkeep in Ansteorra, and we're going to talk about an introduction to cordials. Now, in period, cordials would have been made a little differently than how we make them now. The way they would have been made in period is illegal to do in the United States at least, and probably in most other countries as well. In period, the spicing and flavoring would have been done to the base spirit, usually wine, and then it would be distilled. Obviously, we can't really home distill in a modern setting, and it's probably a good thing because there's a lot of safety concerns with home distilling and running your own still. But in a lot of ways, cordials, there was a class earlier this morning about medicinal wine. Cordials would be another way that people would have been given their medicine. So a lot of times you would have found an herbal cordial that would have had the medicinal herbs in it. I've got one that I'm in the process of. I'll show it here. Now, the ultimate goal at the end is, you see how clear this is? The ultimate goal at the end is to have the whole thing be that clear. So that requires a lot of filtering. That requires several passes through filtering and a lot of different filters of different sizes. And I'll get to the filtering, I'll get to that part of things in a bit. The bottom line, what a cordial is, a cordial and liqueur, I just use the term cordial because everyone knows the term. Technically, if it doesn't have fruit in it, it's a liqueur rather than a cordial. But for the most part, we in the society use the two terms interchangeably. And again, it's flavored with fruit or with spices, herbs. This particular one that I have in process is ginger and star anise. But it all starts from a base spirit. Traditionally in period, it would have been wine. So brandy, it would have been distilled wine, which is brandy. In the right region, you could use vodka as a base. This particular one, I'm giving some of it to someone for whom brandy is contraindicated, upsets his stomach. So I used whiskey as a base. But in any case, you want to use some kind of base spirit. One of the reasons for that is that the alcohol is a very good solvent. And 40–50% alcohol is even better. This particular one's using 100 proof whiskey. Usually I use 80 proof brandy. And that's going to dissolve, that solvent is going to pull out a lot of the flavor compounds from whatever you're putting in it. I've used, one of my favorites that I've made and that I will make again is orange clove. But you have to be very careful with cloves because they can overpower very easily. And that's a trick. One of the tricks to doing this is learning how to balance your spices, learning how to balance the flavors properly. Some people will thought my clove was a little bit too, my orange clove that I made was a little bit too clove heavy. I like clove, but not everyone does. Not everyone likes star anise. So not everyone will like this one that I have now. I did a little bit of looking up and research to find that anise and ginger were used in period for cough and cold remedies. So not long after the whole pandemic started, I put this up and called it my cure for the common COVID. So I used period recipes. I used period herbs that would have been used in that type of remedy. So the production process, you start from your base spirit, brandy, vodka, whiskey, whatever you want to use. Brandy is the most traditional in the western part of Europe. Vodka would be more traditional in the eastern part of Europe. And you make a honey syrup. 1-to-1 volume, 1 part honey to 1 part water. Heat it up, get it dissolved. Pour in your base spirit. And again, I use about 1-to-1, 1 part syrup to 1 part spirit. So it's going to reduce the alcohol content some, which is a good thing. It's also going to make you more of it. You heat that up a little, just enough to get everything to dissolve, because honey doesn't like to dissolve in cold water. Even sugar doesn't like to dissolve in cold water. So you heat it up enough that you get everything dissolved and everything into a nice, stable solution. And then you put in whatever your flavoring agents are. Don't use powders, use the whole thing. Like these would be like allspice berries, whole cloves. Sorry, the light is reflecting off of these and not doing the best, so you're not getting the best view of them, but allspice berries, whole cloves, orange zest. Yes, sir.
I was saying we can see them. When you brought them forward, there was no light reflect. They were nice and visible.
Okay, good. Whatever for orange, for if you're going to put citrus in it, use the zest. Use the zest for fruits. For berries, you can put the whole berry in, but it's going to be a difficult strain. It's going to be difficult to filter. I have a friend who did a raspberry that just never clarified because she was never able to get all of the solids out. And that's in some ways too bad, but it tasted fine. At the end of the process, yes, it's nice to have it look crystal clear, but even more important than that is that it tastes good. At least to me. Once you have your spices and your flavoring agents in there, just let it sit. Just let it sit in a room temperature. I have it sitting back in my laundry room where it's nice and where it's not cold but not hot, and it's away from the dryer. It's away from the dryer vent, so it doesn't get all the heat from the dryer. It doesn't get the agitation from being on the washer, but it's on a counter at the back of my laundry room and just sits, because that time, the longer it sits, the more of the flavor you get. And the more of the flavor you get, the longer the flavors can mellow together, the more you get a good blend. The more that one flavor doesn't the easier it will be for to keep from having one flavor overpowering the others. If you use something like cloves, use something really strong like cloves, use them very sparingly. You may even want to pull the cloves out before you pull the rest of the spices out, the rest of the flavorings out. Again, I've gotten this feedback from previous cordials that were described as being very clove forward. So clove is the one that's especially bad for being overpowering. Yes, sir?
Have you ever used like a bouquet garni bag? Like one of the bags that they use for herbs that you pull the bag out. Have you ever used something like that for the cloves to make it so that they're easier to pull?
I haven't.
Or did I just give you a new idea?
You absolutely could. Yeah, you did. You did give me a great idea.
Okay.
Yeah, a bouquet garni bag would work perfectly.
And I have a question later near the end about when you add the sugar and why, but that's another, I can wait.
Often, mainly, I go ahead with it. You're back to muted.
Yes, I am. Damn Zoom. I almost always add the sugar after the soak in alcohol phase.
Oh.
What's the benefit of doing it differently?
I just learned it when I was learning how to do these. I learned it to get all the liquid first.
Okay, fair answer.
So, yeah, the person that taught me to do it in that order.
Now I'm going to have to make a raspberry liqueur both ways at the same time and have everything be exactly the same except for when I add the sugar. Does it better to use honey
let me know how that
sugar syrup, and I will.
Again, I prefer honey, especially if I can get local honey, because one, honey is more period.
Yeah.
Honey is absolutely more period than sugar. Sugar would not have been widely available, and honey would have been. So for one, that's reason one that I use honey. Reason two is local honey will tend to have some additional character to it. Any kind of honey will have some additional character to it. And it's the same reason that that even for an Eastern European, that it would be more appropriate. You won't ever find me using vodka as a base spirit because there's no flavor. I want that additional flavor in there.
I chuckle because that's specifically why I always use vodka, because I don't want the other flavor. I want to showcase the ingredients more than the liquid. But that might be temperament.
And that's temperament thing. That's also a I like to, my goal in one of these is to make a harmonious blend, is to make a harmonious blend of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I want more flavors that I can blend together. With brandy, I can play something off of the taste, the flavor of the brandy, and find something interesting and find something new that might be completely unexpected. If that makes sense.
Make me experiment now. Oh,
excellent.
And for something interesting that I got introduced to recently, brown sugar simple syrup.
Ooh, you're going to make me experiment too.
The person who showed it to me with rum.
Oh yeah, that would be the right thing to use for that too.
Okay, we'll stop.
I always recommend for your flavoring agents, for spices, use the whole spice. Don't use powders. Powders, you won't get the same flavor. You won't get the right flavor out of a powder. If you use the whole spice, you'll get the flavor better. Once it sits, and you can let it sit as long as you want. The longer it sits, the more flavor gets extracted. This one sat for about, March to November, about 8 months. This one sat about 8 months before I started to filter it. And the first filter, It's cheesecloth. Just gets the big particles out. Gets the big particles out. Gets the actual spices out. Starts to get some of the solids out. I like to just filter into a big Pyrex jar with a strainer. Start with putting cheesecloth in the bottom, pour it through, pour it back into your jug. I get these jugs from a local brewing supply house. I want to say this is a half-gallon jug, more or less. And that does a good job for holding what I make, for holding as much as I make, because I'll use about a pint of honey and about a pint of water and about a liter or so of my base spirit. After you filter it through the cheesecloth, just use a coffee filter. Again, in your strainer, put in a coffee filter, and I'm going to actually start pouring this. It's not a fast process to filtering. It takes a little while, but pour and fill up your coffee filter and let it sit. Flavors that are good to work together. I found orange and clove work very well together. I found ginger works well with orange. Ginger works well with clove. Anything, whatever flavors you like putting together, whatever spices that work well together will probably work well in food, will probably work well together in a cordial as well. Again, the goal is at the end of the process to have it be crystal clear. And you can, when I get this going, I'll hold it up. You can see at the bottom, there's all that sediment still in there. That's why I'm still filtering it through. I've been filtering this since Thanksgiving. Since end of November. Been filtering it fairly regularly. Yes, sir.
After the first cheesecloth, do you ever let it sit for a month or two and then siphon, leaving the solids behind, and then just filter the solids?
I haven't done that. I haven't. I don't know if I have the equipment to do a siphon like that. I'd have to find the equipment for it.
If you have a brew shop near you, you have the equipment. You might have to spend $10 for the equipment, but
fair enough.
Because all it is, it's just a piece of tubing, but you have like a 1-inch J shape, and you just put it down so where the inch is above the sediment, and you start, and then you just let it siphon all the nice clear. It's been sitting there 2 months and everything sunk down. Then all you have left is your solid. You put that through the coffee filter.
Kind of like
yeah, kind of like racking a wine or an ale.
Actually, it's exactly like racking the wine and the ale, because I make mead, and that's where I learned it. Is, you know, you have to rack your alcohol to leave the sediment behind.
And I once knew someone who made mead vinegar.
I think they need to be shot for the offense upon the mead. But
it was excellent. It was very tasty.
I believe it, but it's still an offense upon the mead. Having said this, a friend of mine makes jalapeno mead, so I'm just not going to say anything more.
Capsicum ale.
I actually just finished one of those.
A jalapeno mead?
Yeah, there's a honey that HEB sells. It's a jalapeno honey. I use about 8 pounds of that. And then I back sweetened with another pound of it.
I love the fact that both Thomas and I's eyebrows shot up when you described it. Because I'm like, ooh, that sounds in. Ooh, Thomas.
Yeah,
that sounds very interesting.
Could you imagine taking the jalapeno honey and using that in a rum base cordial?
Oh.
That's actually what I was thinking about. I still have another couple pounds of it. I was wondering if jumping it into a white rum would be any good.
Always use dark rum. Come on.
I'm going to agree with Miklos there. More flavor. Even though he prefers using vodka as his base because he wants the ingredients to be the star. Dark rum, bring the flavors.
Oh, if you're going to use rum, you're already using rum for the flavor. Therefore, go with the right rum.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I haven't done a cordial yet. I'm about 24 meads into the whole thing in the last year and a half.
Hey, could you post in the chat, Bjorn, could you please put where you got that honey from? Because I know that I'm interested, and I will bet money that the good Thomas there is also interested.
Are you guys in Texas?
Just the brand name is enough.
Well, if you're in Texas, there's a store called HEB.
That's nice. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I knew you were going to say that.
He might have a chance. I don't.
There's a friend of mine sent me, the first time I ever tried it was from, she tried it in some restaurant in Illinois. So I think it's becoming, they call it hot honey or fire honey, something like that.
What kind of you're from? I'll check at Whole Foods.
Whole Foods, Amazon probably be a good place. It's like the one she sent me was something like Mike's Hot Honey or some. It was some goofy brand name. I get it. The stores, the big grocery stores in Texas, they have their own version, and they've got like two.
I'm gonna bet that Trader Joe's
would definitely have it.
Trader Joe's or Whole Foods will probably have it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have a Trader Joe's in Tulsa.
Yeah, but they have online. They deliver.
We do have Whole Foods here, though, so I'll bet Whole Foods will have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That jalapeno honey sounds very interesting, and sounds like I may have to work that for my next cordial.
Okay, so next year, when we have lilies, we all need to get together and share our jalapeno rum cordial and see what we each did with it.
You got to be careful about the challenges. Last time I took a mead makers class once about a year and a half ago, and I asked a question about because I've always loved dark oyster beers. And so I made a joke about an oyster mead. And so the challenge was to find one, brew one, and bring one. I still haven't figured out how to do it.
This may be done, but just buy some oysters and put it into the mead.
Yeah, usually like when you use it for beer, we're stealing your topic.
No.
It's like I know because the brewers I know when they do the beers, they use crushed oyster shells. They don't actually use the meat. They take the shells, clean them real good, and then crush them, put them in a bag, and basically let them sit. And once the beer's been brewed, they let them sit for a few weeks.
We're going back to the name of the herb bag. I've just forgotten now.
Yeah, same thing.
Bouquet garni.
Yeah, we're going back to the Bouquet garni bags.
Yeah, like the brew shop we have, he's got anything from like a loose netting to a real fine screen, and I've used them all. So I've learned that smashed cranberries don't do nice things to my bags.
Yeah, those can be a challenge to work with. I've thought about cranberry. Thought about putting cranberry in a cordial. I think the astringency would work nicely.
Yeah, and with the sugar, with most of the recipes I've seen, the added sugar you put in anyway, it should even out the bitter, because I had to fight with the bitter through a mead, and I ended up back sweetening with another honey that I had that was a little sweeter than I actually liked, just to even out the bitter. But it's coming out real nice. The color's beautiful.
So in a lot of ways, cordials are going to be similar. To flavored meads and flavored beers and flavored wines, because you're doing a lot of the same process with it, and you're having to deal with a lot of the same kinds of flavor balance issues. My friend, the one that taught me how to do cordials, entered the last time we had Steps Warlord, entered the Steps Warlord brewing competition with the Cure for the Common Cold. It was a cordial that was all period cold remedies, and I thought it was incredible.
What did it taste like? I frightfully asked.
It was very herbal. It was very, very herbal. It was not bad. It was very good. But it was a little bit odd. Had it been a period documentation competition, she would have blown it away, because she had everything documented, even down to recipes from period recipes of cordials that were used as cold remedies that had these herbs in them. So if you know where to look, and I'm still getting the information of where to look, I'm still using Google mostly, but I've gotten some pointers towards some good resources, some period herbals. If you know where to look, you can find the period herbals, and you can find the period recipes, but be careful with them, because not everything the way they say it then, the way it was described then, is how we would know it now.
And poison.
That was number two. Number two, some of the things that they used as medicine, we now know to be toxic or poisonous. So again, be careful and check all period sources, double check, cross check them with modern knowledge, because it matters. So I don't really want to poison someone with a cordial. I would rather they enjoy my cordials and come back and have more of them.
And because killing our friends at the war is bad.
Yes. Especially if you're not fighters. I mean, you die on the field, you get to res. You get to come back. I don't want you to die off the field.
Yeah. Kill them off the field, you get to jail.
And At this point, the cordial that I've been straining is almost strained through. There's just a little bit left in the bottom of the coffee filter, and and what's going to remain is going to be some of those solids. I'm going to let it sit again for probably for another week and strain it again. It's a long process, and one nice thing with these cordials is you can let them sit even after you've strained them. You can let them sit, and the flavors will continue to meld and mellow.
Give it a month and try racking it.
I will try that,
because that might save you a lot of rack head on wall.
Yes, it might. I'm glad you came. I'm glad you came to this, Miklos, because because it gave me some ideas and gave me some thoughts.
Oh, and it's Miklos. Think Miklos, you far.
Sorry,
it's okay.
I'm used to the S on that name making the SH sound.
Fair enough.
IR voice herald.
IR name herald.
I am also Armory Herald.
Very cool. Pictures are fun.
You both are crazy.
Thank you. Thank you. I resemble that. We resemble that remark because we're both heralds.
In fact, the new Laurel was the person that got me. The new Laurel Sovereign was the person that got me into heraldry.
I got pulled into heraldry decades ago with the comment, Manfred, because that was my name then. Manfred, you're loud. Come announce who's fighting.
I got pulled in by
40 years ago. God, 80, 90, yeah, 40 years ago. Next year will be when I first got into when I first got pulled into doing heraldry. But we really are kidnapping your class.
Yeah. I've pretty well gone through the material that I have, so the rest is really a discussion. What have you found what have you, as people who are here, what have you found that's worked for you, that's worked well for you, or has not worked well for you? I never claim to know everything. I never claim to know everything, and a lot of my...
Anastasia, take yourself off mute. We want to talk.
I can try. My connection is pretty bad.
Did you say ghost pepper honey whiskey?
Yes, I didn't make it. A friend gave me a bottle. It is too hot for me to drink straight, but
yeah,
I am now contemplating what I could do to that.
Have you tried baking with it? Because that would be really, really trippy.
I haven't. That is very intriguing.
If I may suggest, a jalapeno cheddar sourdough using that whiskey.
Ooh.
Or a
note, the person saying this cannot bake. I burn instant cook cookies. So take any suggestion I give for baking with a 2-ton grain of salt.
Let me say, I don't know about the sourdough starter dealing well with whiskey.
That's true. But then just a normal white bread would be really cool too.
You could try, let's see, what kind of spices would go nicely with that?
Clove.
Clove. Yeah, clove would go well with that.
I don't think you could overpower that with clove.
Oh, no. I don't think so either.
Well,
probably not.
you might be able to, but at that point, it might be clove mush versus a liqueur.
Yes. This is now a paste.
Clove vanilla might work nicely with that.
Ooh.
Kaylee out of Ontario had a wonderful comment. She's volunteering to be a taste tester. You do realize it's illegal to ship alcohol.
Well,
And you can do it through FedEx.
Huh?
Not
Do it through FedEx as long as it's going to a state that allows it.
and not if it's baked into something or the person
True.
making it lives here.
That's true. That's true.
Sadly, I'm in Meridiace, but
Remind me, that's Florida?
Alabama.
Close enough. You are a person we hook up with at Gulf War.
Yes, I am one of those.
And who
To be fair, Callie is an expat Northkeeper.
Yeah, I just recently moved up into the Great Wild Pacific Northwest.
Where in Ontario?
Thomas, I think I just muted you by accident. I'm actually in Glenmere.
I was in the Madrone Aquaterra area.
Is there a baron there called Osric still? In Glenmere?
No, we just recently, it's Disa and now I'm drawing a blank on His Excellency. We recently had a baronial change.
This was
like
a long time ago. I got motivated when I lived up there and I was still in the army. And I went out to a Glenmere practice and a big giant baron named Osric handed me his brand new helm and said, "Here, try this on. I haven't fought in it yet." And him and 3 other gentlemen who were all bigger and much older than me proceeded to beat my head in for the next 4 hours. And I had a great time. That was the first fighter practice I ever went to anywhere.
And Callie, I mentioned the person that I'm making this cordial for, or that's getting some of this cordial, can't do brandy. It's Bjorlik.
Of course it is.
And he loves whiskey anyway, so.
Actually, if you really want to get him, he loves gin. He Tanqueray is his favorite.
Noted. And gin could be a very interesting cordial base as well, because of all the flavor it already has in it.
Yeah, say with the flavors, wouldn't it come through already?
Just warn him and herself, because she has an aversion to apparently the scent of gin sweat.
Oh.
Nope, too many straight lines. The one thing I would be worried about gin, you would literally have to start with, make a simple syrup plus gin, see what it tastes like, and then you would almost have to do it one herb at a time to see how they react with the gin flavorants individually.
Right, because there's already so much flavor in.
Because it has such a
because there's already so much flavor in the gin.
And it's not just so much, but also so complex. I mean, a good gin, you take a shot, and you're still getting different flavors a couple minutes later, which could really get monkey wrenched.
This is true.
Add, say, a little bit of thyme or a little bit of basil, either one, and it would completely change all the gin flavorants unto themselves.
Yes, it would. That would be a very challenging. It would be a great challenge, but it would be one that I wouldn't mind trying sometime.
If you ever do it, start off with a huge batch of the simple syrup.
Yeah.
And then as you're doing it, make these, 4-shot bottles or 5-shot bottles. Get the little bottles of each flavor variation for future tastings. So, oh, here, this is what we started with. Now have a teaspoon of this one. Okay, here, have some ginger. Now a teaspoon of the next stage and the next stage. Oh, and here's the final result. Or here's one and it didn't work. So we went back one. And you would almost have a family tree of of testings. And you'll end up with a small.
But in a lot of ways, though, isn't that what we do anyway? Isn't that kind of what we do anyway, where we do a batch and we figure out this worked, this didn't.
True, but we normally don't start with something as complicated as gin.
That's true. We don't generally start with something that complicated, although this is more complicated than what I usually start with, because this is a high rye bourbon. We
may end up at something as complicated as gin, but that's normally our goal. That's not our start.
Right. That's not the starting point.
Luckily, I don't like gin, so I will not have an urge to try this because I know me, and I'm already like, where can I find that jalapeno honey to mix with rum?
And no, my lady wife does like gin, so.
You have an available tester.
So I have an available tester, and also I like gin, so I have 2 available testers.
I should point out you might want to put a lock on it to make sure that it isn't over-tested.
I don't have that worry in my house.
I was talking about you.
I don't overindulge, so.
Thomas, I was joking.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And this comes from the person who his first batch of dark rum cordial went, this is a gift. This is a gift I must remake.
But any kind of experimentation, it's good to experiment with flavors, and that's kind of what got me into cordial making at the start, was experimenting with flavors, figuring out what went nicely and what didn't, what worked, what didn't. A lot of times I use vanilla. I didn't in this one, but a lot of times I do, because I like the way that interacts with. I like the way that interacts with the brandies, and that probably would be excellent in a whiskey-based cordial too.
How do you do notes? How do you recommend tracking what you're doing? Because that's always I
keep a notebook. I notate down that I started it on this day with this much base, this much honey, this much water, and these spices. And then I took the spices out on this day. I keep notes. I just have a notebook that I use.
Okay.
And at the front of the notebook is that it's my brewing notebook. So yeah, I just take meticulous notes. How do you keep track of yours?
Pretty close. I actually go by weight, not just volume. So I'll have 100 gram, like a current one I'm making for a lady friend who loves berries, except blueberries. So it's strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and it's just one of them was 1/2 strawberries, was 2 parts strawberries to 1 part raspberry, 1 part blackberry. The other one was 2 part blackberry to 1 part. And when I remove it, it's currently every 4 days flipping over to keep it spinning around. And then when it's, strain out the solids, add the sugar, let it sit for a week or 2. Okay, rack it, bottle it. Here, drink.
By the way, that sounds really excellent. Well, we'll start wrapping things up because I don't want to miss court.
Thomas, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thank you.